Hi, thanks for joining me today. We're going to be making a delicious blueberry crumble. My husband begs me to make this recipe on almost a weekly basis. What I really like about this recipe, because one of the reasons we're looking at blueberries as one of the recipes this week is because we're focusing on brain health. And blueberries, there's been some good recent research coming out, shows that blueberries really improve memory. Blueberries are really high in antioxidants, and you can tell by the really dark blue purple skin that you can see in these blueberries, that means that they're really chocked full of all those wonderful antioxidants. Are called anthocyanins. Anthocyanins, if you can kind of imagine, basically put a little protective shield around the nerves in your brain and really prevent damage from happening to the cells of your brain. And that's really important with everything that we come in contact with as well as we age. And so eating a high percentage of blueberries in the diet is very beneficial for reducing inflammation in the body, as well as enhancing memory and learning. So really great source, and they taste really good too. Interesting thing, I get a question a lot about are blueberries, should they be fresh or should they be frozen? A recent study just came out and showed that freezing blueberries, even after 6 months, they had no appreciable decrease in the amount of antioxidants that were present. So what that means is that you can buy blueberries in their peak of their season, where you can get them at the best price, freeze them for later, and you're going to still get all the wonderful health benefits without sacrificing anything because they've been frozen. Now, blueberries are a highly sprayed crop, so it is important to buy organic blueberries. Another study done showed the antioxidant differences between conventional blueberries and organic blueberries, and the organic blueberries had significantly higher amounts of the anthocyanins, or the antioxidants. So with this, it is definitely important to get organic blueberries if they're available to you. Okay, so what we're starting with today is 5 cups of blueberries, and so I already have this in a baking dish just to reduce the number of dishes that we're kind of dirtying. And what we're going to just do is try to thicken up the blueberries a little bit. So what I have here is tapioca starch. Tapioca starch is a gluten-free thickener. You could also replace this with cornstarch or arrowroot starch. So what we're going to just use is about a tablespoon of this, and I'm going to sprinkle it over the blueberries. What this does is, as it cooks, it's going to kind of create this really nice thick filling, so that as you eat your blueberry crumble, it doesn't fall apart on you. And then we need a little bit of sweetness too. So I have raw turbinado sugar here. This is kind of more of a rough form of sugar, so it's not quite as refined. There's still a little bit of molasses present in this sugar, so it is a step up from your table sugar. Another alternative that I've used a lot in this recipe is to use coconut sugar, which again is not nearly as refined as table sugar, and I just kind of sprinkle this over the top. The nice part about blueberries is they're already so sweet, you hardly need any sugar in this recipe, and so what we're doing is we're really just capitalizing on the natural sweetness of the blueberries. What I'm doing now is I'm just really lightly mixing the tapioca starch and the sugar into these blueberries so that they're very nicely coated, so we have a nice even sauce when we're all done. Okay, simple, just like that. Shake the pan. So that's ready to go. Now what we need to do is make the topping for this so that we can then put it in the oven. So in order to make the topping, what we're going to do is get out a food processor, and to our food processor I'm adding oats. And so these are quick cooking oats. What I really like about oats is that they are really high in fiber, and so they're really good at reducing cholesterol in the body. And they're really hearty too. And so in terms of kind of a dessert, depending on the sweetness that you make this could actually double as a snack or a breakfast for some. So I got 1.5 cups of oats here. We're gonna add those to the food processor. Now the reason I add the oats to the food processor is just so it breaks up the texture just a little bit. I find that if I use a combination of flour and oats together, you end up needing more sugar. So by using basically just oats, you're really able to keep the sugar content down in this recipe and just capitalize and focus on that natural sweetness of the blueberries. I am going to add about 3 tablespoons of the tapioca starch. Again, just gives it kind of a nice uniform flavor to that crust. And then this recipe calls for just a couple tablespoons of the sugar. So I mean, total in this recipe, we have about a 1/4 cup of sugar, and that's it. So if you think about traditional crumble recipes, there can be upwards of more than a cup of sugar in the recipe, where this total has 1/4 cup, which is really impressive. Always need to put a little bit of pinch of salt, especially when you're cooking with grains. The salt will just bring out that natural flavor and kind of prevent it from being flat. Cardamom is a wonderful spice. It's a very aromatic and very lively spice. It's a little bit on the spicy side. It goes wonderful with blueberries. And so we're basically just gonna add about a 1/4 teaspoon of this to our food processor, and it's not gonna actually be that prominent of a flavor, but what it does do is it just kind of helps blend the flavors, give a little pizzazz. Okay, our goal is to not completely puree this in the food processor, but mostly just to incorporate. And so what we're gonna just do is pulse this a couple of times. And that's it. And so you can see that the oats have started to break down a little bit, and that's what we want. And so that'll give it a really nice crust kind of as we move forward. So our last ingredient is that we're gonna add a little bit of fat here. There's a lot of different fats that you can use. I am using organic, non-hydrogenated vegetable shortenings. This is palm shortening, made from palm oil. So there's no partially hydrogenated oils in it. You could also use organic grass-fed butter. You could use coconut oil. Those would be other options that you can use too. I really like the light flavor of this and the texture as well. So this is kind of my go-to fat for this. So we're gonna use about 1/3 cup and get that in here. Just enough to incorporate it through. Add that to that food processor. And this is gonna really help us form that dough. Okay. On this as well, we're gonna pulse again. Okay, we're pulsing this until a light dough starts to form. Basically what you're looking for is that this is gonna start to stick together a little bit, okay? If it's a little bit too dry, depending on your oats, you could add another little tablespoon of fat, but this is clearly sticking together, so there's plenty in there. Okay, so the next step is just to incorporate the crumble top onto our blueberries. Okay, get all that goodness in there. And then we're gonna just spread it out a little bit. As this cooks, the topping's gonna spread out a little bit, so it's not needed to cover every inch of blueberries. That will happen basically as this cooks and spreads out a little bit. And then what we're gonna do now is bake this in a 350-degree oven for about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, and we're just looking for the blueberries to be bubbling up the side and just a light golden crust on top of this crumble. And then it'll be almost ready for us to eat. So our blueberry crumble has been baking for about 45 minutes. And so now let's take a peek and see if it's ready to come out. Opening the oven. Ah, perfect. So you can see that it is bubbling all along the edges. Blueberries are really bubbling up, and that the topping has a light brown crisp to it. So this is gonna be really good. Ideally, what you'd wanna do is let this cool for about 15-20 minutes or so before you eat it, and that'll really allow that tapioca starch to solidify and create a really nice sauce for the blueberries. But I can't wait. So let's crack into this and see what it's like. You can see it's very light and fluffy. You can see that bright purple from the blueberries. You can see how hot and steamy it is. Really delicious. Look at those blueberries. Just absolutely wonderful. The natural sweetness of the blueberry really comes out, and you just get that little bit of hint of the cardamom. So let your food be your medicine.